And now, it's time for another Dice Tower review with Tom Vasel.
Hey folks, Sentinels of the Multiverse is one of my favorite games. It is a superhero game that is just amazingly fun, and it brings comic book characters to life who are completely made up for the game. So I was very excited to hear that they're making a board game, Sentinel Tactics, The Flame of Freedom, a game of super-powered combat. Now there's a lot of superhero games out there, and I like superheroes quite a bit. There are some excellent ones like Marvel Legendary, which is a deck-building game. There's Marvel Dice Masters. But really, there's very few games where the heroes move around and do actual combat on the map. The only really big one is Marvel Hero Clicks, or perhaps the old Marvel Hero Escape. I heard that this was based on an older game, one that I had liked quite a bit, Schlock Mercenary, the board game, which was based on a webcomic and had sort of the same combat. And I remember how much I liked the combat in this game. Well, will that make this game fun? Let's check it out. The game comes with big double-sided map tiles that you can put down to basically make a board. There's terrain tiles that can go on top of them. If you'll notice, there's dots on each tile that shows how high that tile is. And you can set these up, I guess, any way you want. You can play like a team match where you pick a couple of the hero's villains, your opponent picks a couple of the hero villains. But the book also comes with these scenario books, which are made to look like comic books. Like, for example, here's the day freedom fell. And it starts out, and there actually is comics in it, but then it shows you how to set up the scenario and the rules for each scenario. Then some more comics, then the next scenario, then some more comics, and then the final scenario in that book. And so that's kind of an interesting way to show off scenarios. What players are doing is they're going to be picking a character in the game. Now each character that you pick has a certain number of actions per turn. This is to show their health. You'll put tokens on top of these to show when you take damage and health. And in this game, when you're killed, quote unquote, you can kind of respawn to some degree. This is how many dice you roll on defense, and this is movement. Now in this game, movement is done different ways. In this time, you'll roll 2 dice, and then in this case, it shows an up arrow. You pick the highest die. That will be your movement next turn. If I had been Omnitron 5 here, I would have rolled 3 dice and picked the lowest one. And then sometimes there's, like Bunker here, will roll 3 dice and he'll pick the middle one. And then there's also special powers that people have. Some of these special powers are innate powers. Others are attacks that they can do. And I'm going to take a look here at attacks. So you can see here that the Wraith has Razor Ordnance. And it shows the numbers 2, 4, 5, and 6 highlighted. And she rolls 4 dice. So what the Razor will do on the attack is she's going to roll 4 dice. So she rolls these 4 dice, and she rolls 2 1s and 2 2s, which is a pretty bad roll, because these 2s, the 1s are automatically canceled. 1s and 3s are automatically gone. That leaves her with the 2s. Now, the 2s have to be at least equal to or greater than the distance she is from the target. Then, the target is going to get to roll defensive dice. Let's say they have 3 defense, and they're going to match those dice up to the attack dice and try to get equal or higher numbers, and here they block both of them. Let's try a better roll. Hopefully this one will be better. So now she rolls a 1, 4, 5, and 6. Again, the 1 is out. The 4, 5, and 6 stay. The opponent rolls some defensive dice. They get a 5 and a 4. They can block those, but they can't block the 6. So 1 point of damage gets through. Players will also get attack and defensive -1, which means you roll 1 less die. Or you can get +1s, which you can spend these to get an extra die on one of those. There's also an aim dodge. You can play an aim token before you attack, and it will change all your dice to your highest number rolled. Dodge will do the same thing for defensive dice. Now the way the game is played is each player has a certain number of cards. So let's say Bunker here. He has these cards. At the beginning of the game, he's going to start with 2 of these cards placed in front of him. You can pick any 2 cards you want. Now, each turn of the game, you can switch one of these cards out. They're showing you the different powers that you're trying to use. And he has all different powers here. So if he puts this one in play, he has reach +3, so it's easier for him to hit people. When he makes an attack, he can roll 1 auto miss die. So that seems like a pretty good thing. I think I'm going to start with that in artillery mode. Here, every turn, there's a surge phase, which is right after switching the power card out. So every turn he gets an attack 1+1 token and an aim token. Oh, well that's pretty good too. I should probably start with that one. This gives him a whole extra action, but he can't dodge, move, or be moved. Basically, he's putting down into a turret mode, and he can activate any attacks in his deck, even those not in play. Wow, I can shoot any of my attacks, but I can't move. Well, that seems like a really good one to start with. Here, this is a special attack that he has. This attack has an extra +4 reach. It misses on 1s, 2s, and 3s, though, but it rolls 5 dice, so that could be pretty powerful. Here's a grenade launcher, which doesn't require line of sight to the origin. It does a vertex attack, and it hits 4 away from you, and then it hits on those dice. And then he has this really powerful attack, but he has to spend 4 attack +1 tokens on it, but he gets to roll 10 dice. So this is a pretty powerful attack, the Omni Cannon. So which of these do you start and play with, and which do you switch out from turn to turn? Let's look at another character. Here's Absolute Zero's cards. He has an attack here too. This attack costs 1 health to use, but it does an area attack with a radius 2 and hits on rolls 5 dice. Or this one here, it only has 3 dice, but it's an extra die for each point of health that he's missing. This one here, he can put down these impaling structures which will show up on the map. And I should pause here to say that the game comes with all sorts of different things, lava, and there's the impaling structures for the Iceman that you can put on the board. And then the characters themselves are these tiles, although there is an expansion that gives you basically miniatures that you can use. Anyway, back to, I was about to say Iceman, Absolute Zero. Here I can expand the radius of his area attacks by 1. Whenever I place markers on the map, I can put an extra one of the same type. Ooh, that seems good to put with the impaling structures. Here, approaching 0, whenever he does damage, he reduces their move value by 1, so he's like freezing them to the ground. Here he can roll 4 dice, and each 5 or 6 he heals a health. So which of these attacks and things are you going to use for him to place out in front of him? So everyone has these different attacks, and even the bad guy will have different attacks, like Baron Blade has multiple attacks that he can decide to use or different special abilities. So players are going to get a turn order. The rulebook will give you very specific how turn order goes. Maybe the bad guy goes between every 2 characters. Maybe he goes, because it all depends on the scenario. In one scenario, Baron Blade has to run around and disable electronic devices. Another one, he's trying to blow some pylons to makes the whole city collapse, and the heroes have to destroy these things. And so there's different scenarios. Sometimes it's just a straight up brawl, but there might be some sort of mission involved. And there's things like line of sight with how these block. There are different cards that are included in the game for, like for example, Baron Blade, when he's taking out power, he gets a scenario power. So specific powers that people might have based on a scenario, but there's also like the Velociraptor and the monorail train and different things that might show up based on what scenario you're playing with. Like here's a turret and things. So you can do all sorts of fights and combats, and one person against everybody, or 2 on 2, and one team is eventually going to be the winner based on scenario, or just beating the snot out of each other. Okay, well, a lot to talk about here. First of all, I like the components for the game. The cartoony artwork is very much thrown in there. I didn't think they put enough dice in the game at all, because you're using dice for movement, you're using dice for attacks and defense. The game should have come with more dice, but that's no problem. You can just get more dice. I would have preferred miniatures to the things. You can buy those, but the pictures on the tiles work pretty clear. It gives me this almost throwback to Duel of Ages. So I like that. I'm not so sure about the dots on the different terrain, 1 dot, 2 dot, 3 dot, 4 dots that show the different heights. That's fine, but visually it doesn't work as well. I almost wish that the different dots had been color-coded also, so that at a glance you could see kind of what terrain is blocking what. It just, I don't know, it just didn't come across as clearly, especially on the city boards. The rulebook itself explains lots of parts of the game very clearly, but was laid out in kind of a really wonky style. Now, they did the same thing with Sentinels in the Multiverse. Sentinels Multiverse did not have a very clear instruction book, but you can muddle through it and, oh, that's how the game works. This one is the same way. It really should have started out by saying, do this. This is a scenario book you should use first. You know, instead it's kind of this free-form thing. It's talking about how combat works here, and you can piece it all together, but it could have been more clearly written. Now, for the game itself, I love the combat system, I said that already, and I like how in this game, the superheroes really feel fully realized. Some of the superheroes, like Bunker, are very fun in Sentinels of the Multiverse. Others, Absolute Zero, for example, I showed him in the game. He's cool and all, but he never feels like someone who's freezing people left and right. Here, he actually feels like an Iceman type character, and I like him a lot more in the board game. So the game is actually very entertaining in that regard. It's very light, all right? Even though it looks complex with everything that's going on in it, there's not a ton that's happening game-wise. You're basically just doing this interesting combat system where the dice, it has a little bit of risk in it. It has some auto-miss dice. It has things. There's a lot of different things going on in the combat, and I think it's the most interesting part of the game, which is good because it is a chunk of the game. The scenarios are actually interesting, although a couple of them turn into big games of tag. Or do something before the time runs out. I actually prefer this as a brawl. You get 2 guys, I get 2 guys, let's go at it. Or we take 3 guys. And the game works really well that way. Everything else is kind of window dressing upon that. So this kind of can be played HeroClix or HeroScape style. I'm kind of surprised this game isn't getting a bigger buzz, and I think part of it is because maybe people were expecting something different. The box also looks a whole lot bigger, but I guess it's to hold all the different expansions that will be coming out, I'm sure. Very interesting. I liked it quite a bit. Looking at it on the light side, it's just simple. Run up and punch the other superheroes, speed, do different things, use your shield, shoot guns, something people can only fight melee, stuff like that. But hey, there's so few games of this out there that I'm really glad that this one came out, and even though it has a few minor flaws, is a very fun game. Dice Tower Judgment, approved.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews, as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find other great shows at Dicetowernetwork.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool stuff in stock. Check them out at CoolStuffInc.com.
Chi se ti porta?